Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're going to do another standalone today. Nakia Staten. I hope I'm saying your last name correctly. You're up next week. I don't know if you saw my comment in the comment section of the Don't Tease Me comments, but you're up next with the book Bitter Notes. I will dive into that one. It looks very interesting. However, this week we are going to do book three. I don't know why I like to do that now. It seems like it used to be book ones, and now because they can be read as individuals, book three it is. So today we're going to do book three, which is from the Between the Sheets series, which is by Melinda Di Lorenzo. This is a new author for me. I've never read anything by her prior. And this week's book is going to be Unsolicited Advice. We meet Heidi Bluth, and she is going over a bunch of stories that she's received questions about cheating husbands, bad friends, and she's got about 72 hours to turn her submission in. She is a anonymous advice columnist for the Between the Sheets magazine. Her column is called Miss Anonymous, and what has kind of become evident is what sells is drama, right? Not necessarily, you may want to help, but the more dramatic types of stories tend to kind of pull more readers for this magazine. And it's a really popular column that she has. And so, again, she's got 72 hours to figure out how she's going to do that. So, this isn't counseling work. That's what she had intended to do with her life. She wanted to be a counselor, but she earns a pretty decent salary doing this, and she's able to do it anonymously. So, that works out great for her. She, again, knows she's got to give some drama. And what she does is she's got a system. So first she has a bot that kind of filters through like any really lewd comments, things like that, too much cursing, that type of thing. Then the magazine has a person that filters, and then they send her what's remaining. So a lot of them are people, cheaters. I hate my brother, I hate my sister, sleeping with the mother-in-law or the stepson, just all kinds of stuff. So she's just trying to filter through everything. She's still not getting what she needs. And we find out that there's a reason she's a little off. In about 2 days, it's going to be the 2-year anniversary for something that happened, but we don't know what happened. And she's thinking that she should have made that a day that she was really busy. She planned a lot, but unfortunately, there's nothing planned, and it's like that date is just sitting there, and it's throwing her completely off. She decides she needs some coffee. So she goes in the kitchen. She's about to make her coffee. She looks out in her backyard and sees a man. Yes, he is attractive. He's over 6 feet. Now, this is not to say that short people aren't attractive, but but with these books, normally they tend to make the guys like pretty tall. And so this guy's got blue gray eyes, and she sees that he's caught in what looks like these rose bushes she has. And she's thinking like, why is there a man in the back of my yard? Like this is so weird. There's a huge, big no trespassing sign in the front of her yard, and that means they went past that because they're in the backyard. And then her mind starts processing like, okay, this means danger, right? So she's thinking she's got to get her phone, but it's her coffee that she was about to put on. And so it gets in her nose and her mouth, and she's coughing, and she winds up hitting her butt on the counter, which about knocked her out. And As blackness starts to overtake her, she hears a British accent saying bloody hell. We then switch to the POV of William Rutherford, who is the name of the guy that is in her backyard. So the past year for him has been kind of crazy. He has been on a mission to find the person who ruined his life, and apparently that person is Heidi Bluth. He's come to Seattle to confront her, and so when he sees her like out, he's trying to get into the house. So he winds up taking his pants off to get through the shrubbery. I don't get that because it's kind of like, okay, aren't you going to hurt yourself, get cut up doing that? Wouldn't it be better for the pants to feel it? But anyway, I digress. He's trying to get there. He gets to the front, and her spare key is in a ceramic frog, and he opens the door. And when he does, she's come to by that point, and she hits him in the face. And her butt hurts from the fall, but when she sees him trying to get in, she's like, oh shoot, like, I gotta do something because this guy's trying to get in my home. We switch back to Heidi. She's freaking out, you know. This guy's in his underwear, and she knows, his pants are clearly in the rose bushes. Again, I don't get that because I would have thought that would have hurt you. But anyway, again, I digress. So anyway, they're having this back and forth through the door. She realizes he knows who she is because he calls her name and says Heidi Blythe. And she's about to call the police. And then he states that she's Mrs. Anonymous. So they're still having this back and forth. And this, like, it's funny because she's having these full-fledged conversations in her head. They're both doing it on both their parts, which is really neat, which makes this like a really good read. But here's the problem. She can't call the police because she threw the phone at his face. That's what she hit him with. So he's got her cell phone and she can't call the police. So he's basically like, I'm going to camp out here on this bench, which, has on her little porch area until you decide to talk to me. You right? And he kind of he made a threat because basically he's like, if she's not going to talk to him, he's going to expose who she is, which means people will then know, listen, you got to think every advice you give is not going to be good advice, right? Even if your intentions are good, it might not work out for the person the way they expect. So that's a big deal if you want to remain anonymous for a column like that, and your information gets out there and people now know who you are. That's a big deal. So he did threaten to expose her. I wanted to make it like, well, he can't. No, he did. So she's freaking out because that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. So then we switch to William's POV, and we find out that he's taken notice of her physically as well. Her lush lips, the little short shorts she's wearing, her dark brown hair. Like, he's very aware of her physically, just like she was very aware of him physically. And again, this is why it's such a good read, because I can, give you the review of the story, but certain books, you kind of have to read them to hear how they think of themselves or think about the situation. It's just really neat. Again, really great read. He's also taking stock of everything he's seeing around. Like, he notices like the inside of her house is very kept. The outside seems very unkept. She looks like she just rolled out of bed, and yet it's this weird thing. He's like, she's a mystery to him. She doesn't fit what he had expected. He thought he was going to see some bubbling cheerleader looking American, because of course, he's British. And she's the complete opposite of that. So he's looking around. He's seeing a lot of takeout menus. And he did smell something really good when she had the door open. And so he yells out, "You would decide today to be the day that you cook, because he was really hungry, hadn't eaten since breakfast. And he yells out, "I could go for some Chinese or curry. So then a van pulls up, and it's Girl Scouts, and they're coming to sell cookies. There's a whole conversation between the little girls, and then one of them saying how the house is haunted. Then they see this guy in his underwear. They freak out. They drop a box of cookies and get in the van. They haul ass. They leave. And he just gets up and goes and gets the Thin Mints, which he calls them biscuits. We switch back to Heidi. She, of course, is very much like, this is crazy. This guy's out here. He won't leave. It's like, it's a lot going on. And they start having a conversation again via the door. He tells her he's got a theory about her. So he tells her, if you come out and walk out to the car, I won't expose you. And she was like, why would I do that? And he's like, well, you don't want to be exposed. That sounds like a really good deal to me. So she opens the door, she gets on the porch, has a whole ass meltdown. He helps her through it. And he says something about, what did he say? Something, he was like, it's just another 100 feet. But what she winds up doing is getting her phone because it starts to ring. And so she snatches the phone. It's got a strange ringtone now because he's been messing with her phone. Um, she answers it. It's her boss, Jan, and it's on speaker. And so she mutes her boss so she can talk to her and leave from out there with him. And so she goes back in the house, and they both were affected because they wound up touching each other, because he was helping her through the attack that she was having. And they were very much affected by it on both sides. And of course, she's thinking, I shouldn't be feeling this way. He's thinking the same thing. I shouldn't be feeling this way, because he's like, he came to confront this woman, and yet, and also let her know, like, you ruined my life and all this type of stuff. And now he's completely intrigued by her. He actually had yelled that out to her, that she had ruined his life and stuff before. And she had said to him, it states on the thing that it's for entertainment purposes. So if someone took this, I'm not a therapist. So if someone took that advice and ran with that, that is not my fault. Which I will give her that, because listen, you trying to seek advice from something. It's like back in the day, you don't really see them anymore, but we would have those commercials for the psychics. It would say at the bottom, for entertainment purposes, but people, still wanted real answers. So it's the same thing with her column. You want real answers, but that thing says for entertainment purposes only, so I don't know how seriously you shouldn't be taking that too seriously, probably with a grain of salt, I would think, more so. Heidi's inside. She's talking to her boss, Jan. Jan was calling her to let her know that the lawyers are stating there's a situation. So there's been a complaint that's come in, and it's starting to kind of make sense to her that this guy is probably the complaint. So apparently there's a guy that made a complaint stating that the advice that was given ruined his life, and there wasn't a name attached to the complaint, X, Y, and Z. And she gives them nicknames, the readers. And so this person, it was the same sad story or something like that. She doesn't remember fully what she wrote, but it does sound like vaguely familiar. So then Jan is just kind of like, when she tells her the guy might be here right now, she's like, I mean, he's not trying to kidnap you or anything, right? And she's like, no, doesn't seem like that, And she's like, well, it can't, because you haven't called the police yet, right? And why haven't you called the police, So they're going back and forth on the phone. Heidi told her the statement he had said about her ruining his life, And Jan is like, you need to write a story about this. The story about you fixing the situation. So she's a little on the fence about it. She gets off the phone. She doesn't know if she's going to do it. But I don't know. That does sound like a great story. I gotta give it to Jan. It's like, that is a great story. Like, the advice you've given, because you got to think, I'm quite sure a lot of times she gives the advice. Maybe a letter comes in later to her, maybe, but it probably doesn't get published. So, what a great way to follow up on a letter. I agree with Jan. It's a great story. I think she's going to do it because the fact that she's going back and forth means that she's intrigued. You know, it's a real thought to her to do this. So I think she's going to wind up doing it. So the doorbell rings and she winds up knocking the phone behind something by mistake. She can't get to the phone. A picture frame dropped down there too, and she couldn't get to it, but she doesn't care about a picture frame. But she needed her phone. So she thinks, well, there is someone who's pretty capable outside. And then the doorbell rings again. We switch to William's POV, and the reason he started ringing the doorbell is because it started raining. His pants are soaked. That's got his phone in them. So she opens the door, but it's because she needs help getting her phone back. And he, of course, agrees to it. And we find out that his assessment of her was that she was an agoraphobic was pretty correct. Now, she apparently isn't a complete agoraphobic because sometimes she can leave the house. But then there are other times when she can't do it. It becomes this crushing thing for her. He got her phone for her, asked her when was the last time she left the house, and she said 3 weeks ago. He then asked how long before that, because in order for her to help him, he needs to find out just how bad things are on her end, because he needs her to take a trip in order to fix what she messed up. They have a lot of back and forth. The conclusion, again, is he wants her to come with him to make this right. He says he has memorized her response to his fiance. So I guess the fiance was the one that sought the advice. She, of course, Heidi's like, you must have cheated then. He's like, no, I've never done that, you know? He's like, that didn't happen on either side, you know? She's like, okay, yeah, whatever. She's not buying it. So she's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? You know, like, how am I going to help you? Maybe, you know, my thing is also, maybe the woman just didn't want to be with you. You know? And maybe her response opened her eyes to some stuff that, or I don't want to say opened her eyes, or maybe forced her to look at things that she didn't want to look at, right? But then to hear it from someone else that's completely on the outside looking in, it made her kind of go, I don't want this. Maybe that's what happened. Which means maybe that saved you from a life of pain, right? Of being with someone who eventually would have broken your heart. I don't know. It's a lot of ways to look at it, but he seems to be very convinced that her response is what did it. Heidi decides, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to go with you. So he's like, okay, we got to leave straight away. She goes to straighten herself up. He went outside, got his drenched pants and stuff. She's thinking, should she do a little bit more to herself? And then she got kind of mad at herself for thinking that, because it's like, what are you doing? You're trying to impress a man that is trying to get his fiance back, or ex-fiance or whatever. So it's just kind of like, no. So she storms out, right out the door, and she's like, let's go. And she gets to the car. No shoes on, by the way. Which, what would make you get in the car and not put on shoes? I don't know. What would make you leave out the house and not put on shoes? I don't know. But this is what she did. When she gets in the car, she tells him, you better lock the doors if you want to keep me in here. So they're riding along, and he, of course, is wanting to know how the hell did she get to this place, right? She again has a reason, but we don't know yet, and I'm so anxious to find out. So she does say that the 3 weeks ago she had a doctor's appointment that had been planned, a good time in advance, and that her friend took her. They had different routes that they had set up if there was traffic, bad traffic, just all types of plans. She has to have a very a clear plan for any type of a situation. So I'm like, this has got to be something major that happened to her, because if this is how you have to be every time you leave, this is crazy. Yet you just jumped in the car. So it also seems like when she gets upset or some type of emotion, she can shoot past that fear. So I think that's again what she was kind of describing, what makes her a little different. She's agoraphobic, but it's a little different with her because she's able to push past it with certain situations, but it's not for long. Like, she gets in the car, she hasn't freaked out just yet. She's able to talk, you know, but I'm just like, oh gosh, that's a lot. But I'm just so curious to find out what the hell happened to her. I really am. One of her girlfriends from high school, revealed that she was pregnant, and she immediately left the house, went to go buy a gift, and it was when she was on her way back that she realized she's in a fucking car, and she had a whole freak out. So again, it looks like it has to be a strong emotion that allows her to push past it, but it only lasts for so long. But that's absolutely wild. They're talking, and he, of course, because she's got some snippy remarks, and he's like, listen, we don't have to be friends to be civilized to each other. And in his head, he's thinking, like, even if he wasn't trying to win someone back, he wouldn't just want to be her friend. So there's like real attraction on his end. That's crazy as hell. But here's the thing. Just because you may want to be with someone, it doesn't mean you're not going to find anyone else attractive. But I think what's freaking him out is I think it's just a big shock because he didn't expect it. And it's like, he's a little too intrigued by this woman. It's like, okay, there's attraction, but this is too much. So Heidi goes to sleep. She wakes up. It's dark. She has a whole ass meltdown. He has to calm her down, helping her realize where she is. And then I forgot. Let me go back. During that, she had another freak out, and he was able to calm her down. He almost kissed her. But this freak out, that didn't happen. But it's just like they keep having these very intense moments when they look at each other, when she's staring at him, like, because when he's trying to help her, he's close to her. And it's a lot of stuff going on. So he told her they're at a truck stop. She's like, what do you mean a truck stop? Like, where are we? So he tells her a little bit more of the plan. They're going to Las Vegas. Apparently his ex-fiancée Jules had a lot of things she wanted to do on her bucket list. Like, she had a whole ass file, on her computer of the things that she wanted to do. And 4 of these places he's going to take Heidi to. It's an 18-hour drive from Seattle to Las Vegas, but he's going to split it up into 4 days. The first stop is going to be to Ever Falls. And she wants the plans at first, but then she doesn't know what exactly they're going to be doing in Ever Falls. And she's like, you know what? Don't tell me, because if it's something like skydiving, I'm going to have a complete, like a full on, you got to take me to a hospital meltdown, So that was it. She never brought up the kiss. That bothers him. But what he did say was that doing these different things, him and Jules, I don't know. This is why I'm a little confused. Like, okay, are you wanting her to do these things with you To show what? That's why I'm like, two things. I want to know what the hell happened to her, but I want to know her response. What did he send in and what did she say? Because why are you, the things that you were supposed to do on this bucket list, why are you doing it with someone else? Like, what's the proof in that? I don't, that's the part that has me so baffled. Oh, just a mystery. They get to the hotel. They have adjoining rooms. He asks her to come out with him to have a drink. She, of course, says no. She's going to stay in her room. She still is in shell shock. And so she describes how what's freaking her out even more is the fact that she's actually attracted to him. And there's this sense of jealousy that she feels with the fact that they're going to try and get back his ex fiance, but yet they keep having these moments of intense um, kind of feelings towards one another. And she's trying to work that out through her head. So then there's a knock on the door. It's our boy William, and he brought her some slippers because remember, bitch doesn't have any fucking shoes. And he tells her she put them on. They're gonna go somewhere, and it's one of the first things on the Jules bucket list. So again, if this is supposed to be Jules's bucket list, I'm just trying to understand why would he want her to go. But anyway, she winds up agreeing to go, and she gets in the vehicle. He tells her he's got something to show her. They walk down into the woods, and there's a lot of light. It's a bunch of fireflies. So he tells her the story of the legend, which is where there was a couple down south. One was rich, one was poor. They loved each other. The father found out, sent the girl up north, but they had made a pact that the guy was going to come and get her. But the dad found out about that, and he wound up putting the guy in jail. Eventually, he got released. But then he told her that for every day that they were apart, he was going to get a firefly. Well, when he got released, went up there, she was already married. So he apparently came to these woods, released the fireflies, and that's where they have remained for all these years. So they're having this conversation, and he's wanting to know um, about her because he had stated that he had been celibate for like the past year, and she of course has as well. It's been even longer for her, and he wanted to know again what makes a person become this way, but he figured if he asked her that right now, she might freak out. So he figured he'd ask her enough questions. He'll just leave that alone for right now. And he agreed. He let her know, like, I'm not a cheating person. That had nothing to do with it, why the relationship ended. So after that, she fell asleep. And then they he woke up and she's screaming bloody murder. So this is what happened. They went to sleep and they were on the back of the truck, and she woke up. She had to go use the bathroom, so she went back in the woods. She saw a wolf, and she comes hauling ass. She's like, get in the truck. We got to go. We got to go. We got to go. So after they start driving, that's when she tells him what she saw. So then he started asking her about her family. She told him about her parents. So they apparently died, and she wound up living with her grandmother until she was 18. And the house where she currently lives, the bungalow, that was where she grew up with her grandmother, and she inherited a few years ago. And he was like, of course, like, I'm so sorry because it is a sad story. And she's like, no, it's okay. I had a good life with my grandmother, nothing to cry about. So they get back to the hotel. They still have some time before they check out. She wanted to take a shower. And when he goes up a little bit later after her, he hears this gut wrenching cry. William goes in the room because the door's cracked open. She's by the nightstand, crumpled over, wailing. And so he comes to her, and he's like, tell me what it is. Tell me, like, what happened? He's like, because he told her, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to bring up, the bad memories about your parents. And she was like, no, 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 it wasn't them. I have fond memories of my parents. My grandmother was amazing. It wasn't that. And so he's just kind of like, okay, like, but what is it? And he tells her, you can trust me. At the same time, it's kind of like, but you threaten to blackmail and expose her secret. So why would she feel that she can trust you with this? But he's like, I know what we started off as, but if you tell me something like that, I wouldn't do it. But she, of course, doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't go any further. He starts to make her kind of laugh, kind of pulling her out of this episode that she's having. And they look at each other in this intense way again. And he winds up like play hitting her, whatever, that kind of pinned her underneath them. And he had to stop himself because actually he was about to kiss her, but she broke the spell because she said Jules, and that made him get up and like stop. And then she was like, she needed to take a shower, but she didn't want him to leave, and he was like, that's fine. So she goes in the shower, but the towels in the bathroom, they aren't enough to like dry a leg. The plush ones are right outside of the bathroom. She goes to reach for them, they fall, and she of course tries to stop it. It doesn't stop it. They all fall, but now she is completely naked in front of him, and he was looking in another direction so he doesn't see her full on, but he sees her in the mirror. And the intake breath that he took, she could hear it, and it was just like, oh my gosh. But she scurries back into the bathroom. When she comes out of the bathroom, William is a lot more, he's shut down. Like, he won't look her in the eyes. He won't say too much to her. They go down, they don't go to like a diner to eat breakfast. He goes through a drive-through. And they've got to get some clothes because, again, she didn't pack anything. So they stop at a place called Michelle's. She's about to have a freak out, and she tells him, I need to know how to get out of there. I need to know all of the exits. Um, I can't just go through picking out stuff. Like, she was about to have a full on break, like meltdown. He's like, listen, I'll go in, I'll talk to the salesperson, I'll have them pick some clothes out for you, and they can bring them to you, and I'll make it worth their while, so it'll be fine. And she's like, okay. But she made a comment to him about, you gotta stop this because you can't be my home away from home. And it really touched him, and it also upset him because he would like to be that for her. But again, this is all crazy because you're doing all these things because you're supposed to be trying to get back your ex-fiance, you know? But you're having these incredibly intimate moments with someone, and it's insane. She goes in, it goes pretty smoothly. He picks out this like really gorgeous green dress for her, and she was like, I this would bring a lot of attention to myself. Like, I don't think that would be a good thing. So I'm like, is that a clue? Um, Still trying to figure out what happened to her. But he also bought her jeans and things like that, other shoes. She's not really worried about the money because she can always pay him back. But then she winds up asking him. She said something to him about his parents, and we get a little backdrop on him. So he was actually born in America. He was born in Michigan. But when he was 3 years old, his father got a job overseas, so they moved to England, and he was there for 13 years. His parents got divorced, and he would spend his school, like during the school year, in England and the summers in the U.S. So then his parents got back together. The father retired. Um, and so, of course, that's why he still has the accent because he spent most of his life over there. But he's not bringing up Jules at all. And this is starting to upset her because it's like, we're going all through this for one person. Why aren't you talking about them? You know, when you speak of your life, I would think this would be a part of it. And the first thought she had was, again, you're jumping through all of these hoops for Jules, and like, we're not like talking about her. But she doesn't say this to him. She just starts acting really pissy towards him. And she wanted to know how the hell you met this woman that you're doing all this stuff for. And so eventually she does ask him, And he says, oh, we like met through an app. She's like, that's it? Like, she thought it was going to be something more grandiose. So, um, being all this effort he's going through for it. So it was kind of like, what's the word? Disappointing to like hear, oh, that's what it was. That's it. And then she also found out that the reason the woman was so nice to her, he told the woman, whose name was Michelle, the owner, that um, he was trying to give her a pretty woman experience. So she's like, so you told the woman I'm a hooker? He's like, no, I didn't say that. She's like, that's the whole basis of that movie. Did you never watch it? He said, I watched it a long time ago, but I don't remember what it was about. Heidi goes to sleep. Well, she's not really asleep, because in these past 24 hours he's kind of noticed her, like when she goes to like sleep, she's like dead to the world, but like every little movement is making her kind of twitch, so he knows she's not fully asleep. So he of course is sitting there thinking, well, dang, like what happened, like why did she change? Because she started to get upset, and it's like, well, what the heck, like what is going on? So he blurts out to her, because now he's thinking in his head, okay, does she have like a boyfriend or a husband or a girlfriend? Like, what's really going on with her? And he blurts out, do you have a bloody boyfriend? Are you married, or do you have a girlfriend? And she's like, no, why would you think that? And he's like, I don't know, you just started acting different, so I'm just trying to figure out why you started acting that way, you know? So she didn't answer. She didn't really say anything. So we keep going. And their next adventure, she sees a sign that says the Clumsy Bridge. So she's going, is that where we're going? And he just kind of doesn't say anything to her. But he turns off. And then he tells her, okay, I got to blindfold you. And she at this point is like, what the hell? I'm already in the car with him. What the hell, right? So he blindfolds her and takes her to the little bridge, and then all of a sudden they're going down and they land in water. And before they jumped, he had said like, can you swim? And she was like, yeah. But I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, there's like all these rushing emotions, feelings flowing through her. And girl just grabs him and kisses him. And he kisses her right back. And so she felt like she was drowning. And she was just moaning. It was just so intense. And he was saying something to her. She could feel the vibration. She couldn't make out what it was. But just the vibration from what he was saying to her was just so erotic. And he just loved it. Was just, they were both very much overwhelmed. So then she overhears someone saying, you get it, girl, and that's when she pulls back. And also this bridge, apparently there's no railing. Like, you just walk. I'm like, no. First of all, the name Clumsy is in the name next to the word bridge, and then there's no like thing for you to hold on to. There is no way. But anyway, she stopped kissing him and she went ahead and got out of the water. He gets out right after her, and she's so upset with herself because she gave into this thing that she's been feeling basically ever since she's seen him in her backyard. Okay? So he goes to get the truck. No, I'm sorry. No. He went to go get I think the keys and something else, because he had to take those off, of course, before they jumped into the water. And she heads towards the truck. And she looks for her phone, and she sees it. She's got a bunch of missed calls from Jan, text messages saying he's not who you think he is. So Jan had told her that the complaint came from a guy named Same Sad Story, who was a guy that was a serial cheater. Okay. So therefore, this whole time when he kept saying he wasn't a cheater, that's not how he rolled, that's not what happened in the last relationship, she didn't believe him because based upon what Janet said, this is where the complaint is coming from, right? So she winds up, she's so clumsy. She drops her phone. She tries to reach for it, bumps her head on the glove department. It opens up, and we have the magazine article turned to the page, circled with the answer. And we find out that this was her first response as Mrs. Anonymous. Okay. And it's someone who had 3 months to live. Uh, she named the person because remember she gives all of her responses, she gives them names. She called this person Bucket List. And so the person who had 3 months to live, they were saying that, they were trying to decide if they should just live their life, and not burden someone with all of this, the different medical treatments and things like that, if they should just release them. And her response was, you should live your life with no regrets. Like you're at the end of it, right? At this point, you need to do it the way you want to do it. And so the woman stated in the letter that, she didn't want to be in a hospital. She wanted to live. And so she just said, that's what you should do, you know? And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that response because I think, you try and tell people that even when you don't know that there's like this short period of time left to live. But when someone has a really short time and they don't want to go out being tied up to tubes, they want to be free, then let them do that. I don't think that that was bad advice. I think it's you trying to spare someone a whole lot of pain. It's already going to be hard enough if you're on your way out of here, but then it's like to watch the person basically, shrink in front of you. That's a lot for a human to deal with. It is. So again, I don't think there's anything wrong with the response, but then she realizes, oh, this isn't same sad story. But now I'm just trying to figure out, but if Jules is gone, what is really going on? Like, why does he want to do the things on the bucket list? Like, is this just an homage to her? Like, I don't get it. Like, what was this trip supposed to actually solve? Like, what? I'm clueless. So William comes back. He can tell something's off with her, and she immediately apologizes to him. She tells him she knows he's not a cheater. She goes into the whole spiel uh, about what she saw, what she read. They wind up kissing again. But then there's like a crowd of people that come up, and he's like, we need to get out of here. So they leave, and she, of course, is thinking, okay, there's no more going to Vegas. And he's just kind of like, why not? And she's like, we're still doing the list? And he's like, yeah, like, why wouldn't we do it, right? She also lets him know that that was her first letter. She apologizes to him. She apologizes to him, tells him, listen, I'm going to do a retraction, all this type of stuff. He's still saying, but we're still going to Vegas. So I'm confused. I'm like, is Jules dead? Is she alive? Like, what happened? So all of a sudden, he starts going pretty fast, okay? First, it's 20 miles over the speed limit, then it's almost 30, and now a cop light is in their rear view. So they pull over, and this is what happens. Sergeant Benson is someone they call the love cop. So apparently when he arrests people, they wind up getting married, okay? And this was one of the things that was on Jules' list. So this is what they're doing. So she, of course, is like, oh no, we're not doing this. I cannot be a felon. And he's just trying to convince her it won't be that bad. But I'm like, this is totally insane. So we get a little bit of a backdrop. The Sergeant Benson, he's originally from Tennessee. And because people kept doing stuff to get him to pull him over, he wound up leaving the state of Tennessee. But what's happened is they found him again and people still are seeking him out. I'm like, this is so crazy though. That's crazy. They do the whole arrest thing, okay? Strangely enough, she did not freak out that bad at first, okay? Because you got to remember, they're in the backseat of a squad car and she's locked in there. She has no way of getting out. By the time the freak out was about to happen, they were already at the police station. So they get taken to a waiting room. Um, it's just so weird because people keep finding the Sergeant Benson guy. Like, how do they? I guess I don't know. I guess you can put up anything and people can find you. I guess technically that really isn't that hard. So I take that back. Um, they're in the holding room. It's not like a jail, so it's kind of wild. But he starts to think like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about this. Like the fact that she has an issue being closed in. Like, ooh, and he apologizes to her. He's like, I'm sorry, I didn't think, because this is all the recipe for a great freak out on her end. So then finally she decides she's going to tell him what happened. And I'm like, thank goodness, I needed to know. So this is what happened. She had a sister named Sab, S-A-B, Sab. Maybe it's Sab. We'll say Sab. And Sab was about 2 years older than her. She was an alcoholic. And she offed herself 2 years ago in Costa Rica. So when her parents passed, she was like 10, so Sab was like 12. But Sab has always been a very extreme person, very intense, and she was a full on partier by the time she was 15 years old. They couldn't do anything with her. I think maybe twice before she turned 21, they had put her in rehab. She had major bouts of depression, a lot of things going on. So when the grandmother died, she left them the bungalow, the house that she currently lives in. They inherited that along with a nice little chunk of money. So Heidi, remember, was going to school to become a counselor, but she decided, hey, let me travel a little. So she took that time off and she went to different places. She went to Africa, Europe, just different places, Budapest. And we find out what would happen is when she would leave, different times her sister would call her begging her to come back because she needed her desperately. And then when she would come back, after spending thousands of dollars to come back, pretty quickly, all of a sudden her sister was fine, didn't need her anymore. So the last time her sister called, she didn't go. And that was the time her sister offed herself. And the reason she feels like, okay, if I leave the house, something bad is going to happen. Not too long after her sister was gone, she left to get something, went to a store or something like that. When she came back, the bathroom had flooded. So in her mind, she has equated, if I leave, disaster happens. So guess what? If you don't leave, you don't have to worry about that type of stuff. Logically, she knows that's not true, but unfortunately, the events that have happened have cultivated that type of thinking for her. So he asked her, have you done anything to get help for this? And she kind of looked at him crazy, but I'm like, no, 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 no. You have even psychologists that have people they go to see. Like, no one can just handle everything, you know? And yes, you were going to school to become a counselor, but you really aren't dealing with this. You're not coping with this. But what made her, I think, believe she wasn't as bad off as she was is because she wasn't like a true agoraphobic, right? She can leave sometimes. It's just that when it hits her, it's just beyond crushing. Because she described a few times where, she'd leave out, but then once she remembers, oh shoot, I'm away from the home, all of a sudden here it comes. Or it happens before she ever leaves the house. So I think she thought because she wasn't like a pure agoraphobic that she wasn't as bad off as she really was. But no, baby, this is still bad. You've got to get help for this because I think she probably could have been a lot further along. But maybe I don't know. Maybe this is self-imposed. You know how sometimes people do self-imposed exiles on themselves. Maybe this is a mental exile she's done to herself for punishment because she didn't go to her sister that last time. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. He of course tells her, how sorry he is, and he tries to kiss away her pain. The kiss gets hot and heavy, and girl was ready to just bang it out right there. When Sergeant Benson came in, told him they could go, she was tempted to tell him, you can come back later, but she didn't do it. So at that point, everything kind of moved in a blur. They get out of there. They stop at a store to get some condoms. They go to a hotel room or motel room, and because the motel was like 30 minutes away, and they just have at it. He eats her pussy, he fucks her. They fuck like 3 times, and there's like 3 condoms left, and he's like, you ready to use the others? He is insatiable, but he's gone a year without having sex. So, I'm sure if he didn't have a heightened libido, he's got it now. You know what I mean? She does admit to him, how much she does like him, and she does hate the idea that this has got to end. He admits he doesn't want it to end either, but I think if I'm not mistaken, he lives in England. So I'm like, this could be a bit of an issue. So anyway, they wind up going for pizza, and he had already searched the exits and everything else to make her feel better about going inside. And he's honest with her. He tells her, I want more. And she's like, you want more, but I can't be a normal girlfriend. He's like, well, who said I wanted a normal girlfriend? His thing is when he met her, something changed. And it's something that hit him that he had not felt. He's never felt that way about anyone. And he realizes he hasn't really been living. He's been on autopilot. That's it. And he wants to get to know her further and wants to know more about her. And of course, they're ready to get hot and heavy again. They're ready to go back to the motel. Well, when they left out, they were just too horny. They didn't make it back to the hotel room. They went to Pound Town right outside, like around the corner. So he lifted her up, carried her around, and they banged it out. And it was like that wasn't enough. They wanted more, so they went back to the hotel. And on their way back to the hotel, they get stopped by a train. And our girl gets hit with an attack. And it feels like she needs to get back to the hotel. She needs to put herself underneath the covers and hide away. She jumps out of the car trying to get to the hotel. And it's almost like she was happy. And it was like her brain is like, you're not supposed to be happy. Something's wrong. So she has an attack, right? So he, of course, put the truck in park and he came after her. She, of course, was like, this is going to work. Like, I'm not normal. You can't, you keep making me feel normal and I'm not. He says, I know you're not normal. He's like, but I'm going to be here. He's like, if we're together for the next 5 years, if we get married for 3 and we break up, I'm still going to be here for you. And he said, I'll be a friend forever. And she was like, I thought you said you didn't want to be my friend. He says, well, I'm an enigma, so. And he also had started calling her his girlfriend. Like, this is how he feels. This is what he wants. So then he asks her a question and he wants to know what she's doing to get herself better. She's ready to go off on him, but then she thinks about it and she realizes she hasn't done anything. And the truth was she was really close to getting her her degree, and she dropped out. She took that break, and then it wound up being a permanent break. And she thinks that she's pretty much been what I thought. She's been punishing herself because any minute she starts to feel happy, it's like, this is normal. I can't have that. I'm not allowed to be happy because I failed my sister. But she didn't. I don't believe she failed her sister. I think she put up a fucking boundary. She got tired of being pulled and pulled by her sister, and she made a decision that I can't do it. I don't want to do that anymore. And let's be very honest. If the girl was going to do it, if she was determined to do that to herself, it was going to happen. It would have been, what if that would have happened and she was in the house? If Sab had reached that point while she was in the other room, and she had to find her sister that way. That would have been even more traumatic. You understand what I'm saying? So I just feel like it's easier said than done. I get that. But unfortunately, she has really done this self punishment to herself because she feels like she failed her sister. It's just so sad. It made me think about the Golden Girls. Yes, I love them. They're awesome. Um, the episode where the guy he was an agoraphobic, right? He had been stuck in his apartment since like the 70s or something like that, and it was like the early 90s. The world, he said, just got too hard, and he just couldn't be in it. And he did not leave at all. Now he would be like an extreme case of an agoraphobic, because that's straight up, he can't leave. But someone like her, again, I think she felt, I can leave sometimes. I'm not as bad. She never got the help she needed. Then you have to compound. She's got grief. She's got a lot of stuff. So, I mean, the mere fact that he's willing to be there for her, I think that does say a lot about him. Because I think that's pretty decent. Because that's a lot. Like the freakouts, when they describe them in the book, they're intense. They're very intense. And so for someone to just meet you and be willing to deal with that, it's just kind of like, is he crazy? Let me stop. But it's just so much to deal with. Oh my gosh. So she decides, you know, she's got to come to a reconciliation with herself. She knows she's got to do it. Because she deserves to be happy. She really does. It just breaks my heart for her. So they get to the room, and he was about to say something. He was about to say, like, I'm about to fall in love, like I'm falling in love with you. But she stopped him. And she said, he's like, why are you stopping me? And she says, please don't say that to me. Because if you say that to me and you make me fall in love with you and then you break my heart, she's like, I'm going to be so pissed off. So he just grabbed her. He was like, I promise you I won't X, Y, and Z. He's like, I want you. So they go inside, they're on the bed, and then her phone starts ringing. And it says it says Jan Sheets. So he looks at the phone because she was ignoring the phone. She was like, whatever, right? But he's thinking Sheets, and it's Sheets magazine. Like, wait a minute. That must be her boss. So he's like, I think you need to get it. Well, she gets it, and this is what she finds out. So the dude that's behind the same sad story, his real name is Bert Horowitz. And apparently he was going to do some really awful things to her. The attorneys looked deeper into the complaint to find out who it was. And when they went to his apartment, dude had like been tracking her. So he knew where she lived too. And he had planned on doing some bad things. Now, he has a history of domestic violence and things like that, but he still blamed her for how his life turned out. And so I was like, good grief. But you know what? It helped her because it was like, oh my gosh, if I would have stayed home, I would have met a worser fate. And leaving actually saved her life. And I think for her, that is extremely important and extremely helpful in her getting over her issues. It's a great step for her. It doesn't solve everything, but that's a really great step. After the phone call, he just kind of waited to see what her, gauge her reaction, and she was okay. She didn't panic. She didn't have an attack, and she was able to talk, and then of course afterwards they had to get it in. So they get to Vegas. It's a brand new hotel they're staying in. It's not even open to the public yet, but yet some kind of way he scored 2 rooms. The concierge told him they were going to upgrade him to a suite since he didn't need the 2 rooms anymore. This place is stunning, absolutely beautiful. She is in awe. Um, he tells her when they get to the room that shows her there's a bartender in there to serve them, just everything, just top of the notch everything. So he tells her, I'm gonna give you 30 minutes before you come down. So he's like, this is the final thing on the list. Well, the final thing we're gonna do on the list. So he tells her, I hope you have an open mind. He tells her, I gotta go talk to Jules. And I'm sitting there going, okay, so Jules is not dead. And then she's thinking, like, okay, did he mean metaphorically? She's confused, like, what exactly is going on, So she gets ready because he had bought her this really beautiful blue dress from Michelle's, but then he also had them send up like some really gorgeous dress shoes and a nice purse to go with it. So she's headed down. She was about to have a freak out, but she caught it. She got it together. She gets downstairs. She sees a fucking chapel. So the first thing I'm thinking is a wedding. And I'm like, it's Vegas. So, okay, that's a possibility. That's not too far fetched, right? A wedding. But like, y'all just met. Like, wait a minute. Then I'm thinking, like, okay, was he going to make her marry him? Because she ruined the other engagement? Like, I'm like, what is going on? So she gets down there and she sees the chapel. She sees our boy William with this gorgeous blonde woman. He hears the name Jules. She hears it. They seem very loving towards each other, and it rocked her because she knows Jules isn't dead, and it looks like he's going to get to marry the woman that he wanted all along. So she bolts the hell up out of there. Okay? So we switch to William. William's talking to Jules because Jules is like, okay, why did she just run? Like, what's going on? And he started thinking, oh shit, 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 I gotta go after her. She's not at the front desk. She's gotten the keys and she's going to get the truck. So he winds up having to jump in with her. She's driving. He's like, please, just let me explain, please. And she's just like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Like, I can't believe you did this. And he's just like, give me a moment to explain. If after what I tell you, if you don't want to talk to me anymore, if you don't want to be with me, you can take the truck and you can leave. Okay? Just give me a moment. So she tells him, you got 2 minutes. So, bombshell, he was the one that wrote the letter. It was him. He was the one diagnosed with cancer. He got the surgery and they still didn't think it was looking good for him. And that's when he winds up writing the letter to her because he had saw, Jules was there for him, with the aftercare and everything. And he just couldn't see himself doing that to her. It wasn't even his idea to get married. Jules is the one that proposed to him so that they could get married before he died. And he, sent that letter in, received that advice, which honestly, that's what he wanted to do anyway. I doubt other people was telling him to let Jules go. So I think that's what he wanted to do. And what our girl Heidi told him was it just confirmed to him, and so he did it. Well, Jules didn't like it. She didn't want to break up or whatever. But anyway, she went on. He got on. There was an experimental treatment that he did, and so he of course survived. But when he went back to get Jules, girl had already moved on to the next relationship. And the reason they were meeting, and the reason the whole for the Vegas trip, is that he thought he could still convince Jules to be with him if Heidi did a retraction of the statement saying, no, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have told him that. It was the wrong decision. So he knew Jules was getting married to somebody else by an Elvis impersonator, because that was on one of the things on her list. So that bucket list is real. That is from her. But what happened was she bet him, I bet you can't do one thing on my list. Well, he decided he was going to do four. And the fourth thing was going to be to try and get her to marry him. Well, once he met Heidi, all that shit went out the window. And Heidi's who he wants to be with. But he had already set this bullshit into play. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, I think also the idea that he felt something so strongly, so in such a short period of time for someone, he never felt that way about Jules. But I think, kind of like the sad story guy got obsessed, he got obsessed with it too, because it's like, okay, I'm missing out on things because this person said this to me, even though, let's be honest, it's entertainment purposes. This is a choice you made to follow through with the advice. When he thought he really was going to be dying, he was a bricklayer, so he retired. He gave a bunch of money to charities. Like, he was fully preparing himself to be gone from this world, you know? And so I think when you basically think this is it, but now there's life and there's not a plan, it threw him off and he needed something to focus on. And so he focused on finding the woman that gave gave him the advice. But she of course was like, I don't want to be like runner up, second choice. Like, I don't want to be that. Like, that's not what I want to be. And he was like, you're not that, that's not who you are. That's not what you are to me. I want to be with you, and that's it. I already told Jules about it. She knows. Like, she was happy for me. Like, basically it's all good. So then we fast forward 3 months. She's been going to therapy. She's coming out of one of her sessions, and she's on her way to meet up with William. They're going to celebrate the article she wrote about their encounter. It's one of probably the best things Jan says she's ever read. And so after this session, he wants to know, okay, well, what did the therapist say? And she's like, you're not supposed to know what goes on in my sessions. Well, she hasn't let him say I love you in all these months. She wanted to be ready to really hear it, to receive it. And so he keeps wondering, is this the day? Is this the day that she's going to let me say it? So the therapist told her, it's up to you. If you're ready to hear it, then, it's totally up to you. So she decides she is ready, and he didn't say it. And so she's kind of looking at him like, okay, well, why aren't you saying it? And it's like, I'm finally ready to hear it and you won't say it. And he just took out a little black box, and we find out that in a few minutes, in front of her family and friends, he's going to make it permanent. And that's how it ends. I thought this was so cute. I thought it was adorable. They had me because I was just like, this doesn't make sense. This sounds crazy. I thought maybe he was going to do something crazy to her. I just had all kind of thoughts with this one. But it was a nice twist. I loved it. It was really nice. Again, this was a new author for me, so definitely look into more of her things. Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links are going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.